So hi everyone, welcome back to Heart of the Matter with me, Stephen Chia. Now, 3 weeks ago on the 5th of January, e-commerce giant Lazada retrenched about 100 people, and this quickly set off a chain of events. Now, here's a quick summary. The National Trades Union Congress, that's NTUC, and its affiliate, Food, Drinks and Allied Workers Union, said they were not consulted on these sudden layoffs. The matter was then escalated to the Manpower Ministry. Now, Lazada apologized. It began negotiations with the union for extra retrenchment benefits. So it begs some key questions. What rights do retrenched workers have, and how do unions advocate for them? More importantly, can companies be taken to task if they don't follow the union's advisory? Quick note before we began, we did reach out to Lazada and they declined to join us. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for joining me. Now, Patrick, let's start with you. For an employee, what does being part of a union actually mean for them?
Yeah, I think there are two things. Firstly, whether a company is unionized or not unionized. And the second thing is union membership, whether you're a union member or not a union member. So I think these dichotomies do play a part in whether you get to be represented by the union.
Okay, does that mean that all workers are in a union?
Yes, so everyone who's a worker in Singapore can be a union member.
Okay.
However, there's a difference between union membership and representation.
Oh, what's the difference?
Union membership, to enjoy all our social benefits, training benefits, and an entire plethora of NTUC membership benefits.
Okay.
Anyone can have access to that, save for some excluded categories. But otherwise, representation means that we are able to either collectively or in a limited way represent on your behalf if you face some grievances or problems in the workplace.
Okay. So in other words, if I feel that I have been wrongfully dismissed from my job, for instance, you would be able to represent me.
If you are a union member, yes.
Okay. But otherwise, I could also just join to enjoy the gatherings, some discounts, things like that.
And also
like
the training benefits that we have. So we have an entire slew of benefits, yeah.
Okay. Then Guan, on the flip side, you are with the National Employers Federation, right? So who does that represent?
Okay, so the Singapore National Employers Federation is also a union, except that we're a union of employers. So we represent the employers. So we will represent the interests of the employers, for example, when the issue is raised at the mediation.
Right. So in other words, a company can come to you and say, I have plans to retrench people. What's the best way to do it? Help me work through the situation and find, I guess, some kind of a negotiation.
Correct. So we are very familiar with employment law, Employment Act. And so from that perspective, we are also therefore in a very good position to advise employers in terms of the actions that they could take. In general, because we work very closely with both the Ministry of Manpower as well as NTUC, we always try to find what we call win-win-win outcome.
Okay. But just like the trade union, you have to choose to be a member and to sign up. Not every company is automatically a member, correct?
Correct. So the employers choose to become a member of SNEF.
Okay, good. That helps us understand, I guess, how the two organizations sort of work. But in the case of Lazada, some said the way the retrenchments were sort of meted out could have been better. Said they were blindsided, the payouts were much lower than what they expected. But actually, is a company obligated to inform the union or even the Ministry of Manpower about their steps about wanting to retrench people?
Yes, there are a few policies, frameworks, as well as guidelines, advisories, including laws in respect to notification and the responsible retrenchment.
So there is a law saying they must inform.
There are a few documents. I would like to allude to them. Firstly is last couple of years, as part of the pandemic, NTUC rolled out a fair retrenchment framework, which encapsulates quite a few key principles. One of which is early notification of affected workers. But likewise, at a tripartite level, between SNEF, NTUC and MOM, we came up with a tripartite advisory on the managing of excess manpower and responsible retrenchment. So it's actually tripartite advisory, promulgated sometime in 2008-09 as part of the global financial crisis, and we've had several iterations.
So you're saying there is sort of a guidebook out there to help companies along. But I come back to the question, so Guan, I mean, do companies have to inform the government that they want to retrench people?
So the law requires company to inform the Ministry of Manpower within 5 days after they have notified workers of their retrenchment.
So 5 days.
Within 5 days.
So I say I'm retrenching you today on Monday. I guess within the next 5 days, by about Friday, I have to inform the Ministry of Manpower.
Correct. Within 5 days.
And what happens if I don't?
Okay, so if they don't, then of course the Ministry of Manpower can take actions against the company. But in general, this is not where companies fail. Companies do inform the Ministry of Manpower. I think it's useful to understand the thinking behind why there's such a requirement. It is so that there is potentially the ability to help affected workers. As you know, any individual that is being retrenched could potentially find themselves in challenging circumstances, right? Because they have lost their job, they have lost their income. And so together with the Ministry of Manpower as well as, of course, the union and other employers, it is potentially possible to look at what are the steps that we can take to help the individual get back into the workforce.
Okay.
So there are many schemes that the government offer that both individuals as well as companies can leverage on that will then bring these individuals that are affected back into work.
Okay.
So that is essentially why there's such a requirement. But in terms of the notification to the union, essentially for unionized companies, because they have a relationship with the union, it is always useful for such companies to then, if they have a need to retrench, to do so in advance, notify the union. Then they are able to work with the union in terms of the support that can again be provided to the individuals that are affected.
So that's more like trying to, I guess, set the groundwork, the foundation before the actual act happens. But in that same sense, I mean, someone like Lazada, they have no obligation to let the trade union know that they choose to retrench workers,
so
right?
Besides the 3 pieces of documents we just shared about, the fair retrenchment framework, the tripartite advisory, as well as this mandatory notification requirement as required by Ministry of Manpower. In most unionized companies, we have a collective agreement. A collective agreement is a word of court. It's a formal document where the union collectively bargains with the employers. And in this document, it's usually entrenched within this collective agreement a requirement of early notification to the union of any potential retrenchment exercises that the company is doing. Well, on average, 1 month before the worker themselves are notified.
Right.
So there's usually this built in.
But you say usually, not every organization
why?
has
Because
this.
like
Is that
in
true?
Lazada's case, we have not gotten a collective agreement yet. It's only a memorandum of understanding. But we will try to build these key principles because as a run-up before we actually have a final piece of collective agreement, we may use a memorandum of understanding, sort of an interim before.
Sure. It's just a bit like a handshake to say, hey guys, we agree on this. But
so some of these key principles, including notification, are usually inbuilt in MOUs. And the early notification I shared earlier, besides the framework, advisories, and the requirements, it's a good practice for a variety of reasons.
But as you mentioned, it's a good practice.
Yes.
And in a way, it's a bit of a nice to have. But from a company's point of view, there could be concerns of sort of revealing some of their steps, because it could affect their share price, their business operation. So in this way, actually, Lazada had no obligation to let the trade union know that they were choosing to retrench staff. Is that correct?
I think it's good industrial relations practice.
It's a good practice, but they were not obligated.
Simply because if you don't at least notify the union, I think we have strict principles of confidentiality and non-disclosures. So I think essentially is for us to better negotiate a package that is fair and amenable to parties.
I mean, I think on hindsight they realize that too. I mean, you are talking to them now, right? Both of you.
And I say this because when it's not done properly and carefully and responsibly, there are in fact more ramifications to reputation, because existing employees within the company as well as potential employees wanting to join the company will look at how you do things,
Yeah. I think they are realizing that too, and they've seen the sort of what's happened and the unhappiness it's caused, and realizing that they could have better managed the situation to a large extent. But I guess what I'm getting at is that in a way, companies don't really have an obligation because businesses want to run in a way that allows them to, I guess, achieve the best profit, right? And we know in the tech sector especially, ramping up, ramping down workers seems to be the norm. Every few years they're hiring a whole bunch and then letting go of a whole bunch. So, Guan, is this also something that we should start expecting that if you work in certain sectors, you should know that this is how the industry works?
Actually, it's not just in the tech sector, right? If you look at the WEF report, they have indicated that in the next 5 years, 23% of the global workforce will be affected by business transformation.
Wow, okay.
And of course,
that's a nice way of saying that you may have lost your job in between.
Yeah,
Is it? Okay.
And in fact, if you follow what President Tharman mentioned at the WF forum, right?
Yeah.
We need a continual regeneration and upskilling. Right, you cannot afford to expect that the skills you have today will remain relevant, because the job that you have today will be affected. In the same report by WEF, they were talking about the proportion of human and machine in terms of job tasks, right? Today, in 2022, it's about 34% of the job is done by machine.
Yep.
In 5 years, it'll be 43%.
Wow.
So technology will affect how work is done. And of course, today we are also in a very volatile, hyper-competitive environment.
Sure.
Businesses cannot expect to just continue to do the same thing and continue to do well.
Yeah, in a way, the whole term iron rice bowl, I think, is something so foreign nowadays, right? So in that sense, should we all expect that we may, lose our job at some point in time during our career?
I think there'll be quite a lot. I agree with Guan that there will be a lot of disruptions.
Yeah.
I mean, we have seen the lights of digitalization. And that's why we had our industry transformation maps a couple of years ago, to really rally workers, rally companies together to embrace this transformation. And lo and behold, COVID came.
Yeah.
Some sectors were thrown off guard, some pivoted, some transformed. So I think this transformation journey will continue. Inevitably, now with the ESG agenda, with innovation, with generative AI.
I'm sorry to cut you off there, but we agree that this transformation must carry on and it will continue to evolve. So in a way, we must all expect that this could happen in our lifetime. So the question then is, do we want to have companies manage it better? Do we want to make sure that they, therefore, when they need to retrench, are able to manage the situation better, so that everyone, as Guan mentioned, is a win-win situation, right?
Totally agree. So that's
but right now, the measures to fine them for not, like, let's say you don't inform MOM, it's just like a fine. I don't know, it's a few $1,000s, which to a big company, it means nothing.
Actually, we need to go much upstream, right? Retrenchment is something that companies do not necessarily want to enter into. It's not good for them, it's not good for the workers. So the idea is, if we are able to do more upstream measures, then we will not require retrenchment.
So preempt.
Yeah.
Preempt.
Just
so
like
for example,
company training committees.
Yes,
and
when you talk about your CTC.
company training committees and our whole work. I mean, we've been lobbying government. We've been really embracing. Even the labour movement has taken a bold step forward in this area of transformation and company training committees. So we have formed to the tune of almost 2,000 companies training committees, and really at a full overdrive, trying to get workers to upskill, reskill, multi-skill, and really basically to stay relevant and ready for all these curveballs.
And we all know this, that we talk about lifelong learning and and retraining. But again, for companies who are they've got to meet certain KPIs, they're looking at the numbers every year. Sometimes the best way is just to let go of a bunch of people.
Yes. So in
and
our
then 2 years later, rehire another bunch of people, right?
See, in our tripartite advisory, we said it quite clearly. It's a tripartite advisory to address managing excess manpower and responsible retrenchment. So we know, our mantra is retrenchment is the last resort. We want you to cut costs to save jobs, not cut jobs to save costs. Okay. So at the end of the day, there are a whole plethora of measures to help you to cut costs and please, try to use retrenchment as a last resort.
I think, and to be fair, companies also don't often choose retrenchment as the first resort. But let's assume that it is one of the measures taken. How then do we better manage it? Is there a way that we can then work so that when these things happen, how can we manage it better so that a similar situation like what has happened with Lazada doesn't happen again? How can workers be better protected?
Maybe alluding to the framework as well as our advisory, maybe a few key principles. I think firstly, open, transparent communications by companies. I realize, I've assisted in many of these retrenchment exercises for the past 2 decades, and I realize those companies and employers who are open and transparent about forecasts of company performance, what's the outlook, tend to when anything happens, it augurs better on the ground with the workers. So that's one. open and transparent sharing and contemporaneous sharing of company performance. That's one. Second, if all else fails and measures been embarked on, be it shorter work week, tapping on a flexible wage system and yard shutdown or even furlough and the whole works. If all else fails, I think the next key thing, if it's retrenchment needs to be carried out, notify the union early. We are here to partner you. In Singapore, we can't stop retrenchments, but we can negotiate how it's done, and we can help segue the workers even before they leave the company. I think I personally been involved in quite a number last year in the electronics sector, where there were quite massive layoffs to the thousands. And what we have done is, because of early notification, we managed to in ahead of time, conduct job fairs within the company line. Bring prospective employers in adjacent sectors and hiring and growth sectors to the company line.
So you
and try to segue the workers there, or do some form of training to bridge any skills gap to join another growing company.
So in a way, you're really trying to help the situation, not worsen it. And it sounds like a lot of it is managing expectations, because if I know my company isn't doing well, I know we're cutting down operational hours, I get a sense that I know I may lose my job, right? So I'm better prepared for it.
But there's also the part that the workers can do in terms of constantly looking at upskilling themselves.
Right.
The more you are skilled in terms of what you can anticipate as is going to be needed, then your confidence to be able to secure the next job will be much higher. So digitalization is something that is quite apparent. It will affect the world of work, right? So if you don't have digital skills, you pick up those skills. And because you have those skills, actually your ability to move into an adjacent family of job will be much higher, right? And your confidence in your ability is higher. So building your own resilience through actions taken by the individual will certainly help.
So in a way, you're saying workers should also take their own steps, be more proactive. Yeah, think about your future. Think of your, this role you're doing. Can I do it 10 years from now when AI is here? Will I still have a job? And if you don't think you will, then you should take steps to, I guess, solve that problem instead of waiting until they say, I don't need you anymore, right?
And we're quite fortunate in Singapore. I engage a lot with our tripartite partners and counterparts across the globe and in the region. And many of them are very admirable of how in our Singapore system, there's a lot of support. So there's no shortage of funding support, whether it's skills future credits for companies, company training committee, national fundings, professional conversion programs.
So there are lots of options out there.
So the key thing is I think the mismatch of skills and expectation, at the same time also information asymmetry. So some workers, I noticed, some workers may not know where are the growing areas. So what kind of skills should I pick up,
Yes.
Because I've been in the job for the last 20 years, I may not know, Gen AI is going to hit my company hard and fast.
They may not think about it.
I may be going to renewables instead of ICE and stuff like that.
So for a long time, people have also thought of unions as being the one to fight my cause when something happens. So in this case, if let's say the retrenched workers at Lazada, they could have put up a protest, maybe even a strike. I don't know. Help us understand here in Singapore context as well, because we rarely see those happening. First of all, are they allowed? Is it legal? And why? How do we sort of avoid that, or why do we avoid that?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think in Singapore, we have a uniquely tripartite relationship and a lot of tripartite structures. So in the unionized environment, if there's collective bargaining, and we do, when employers and employees or the unions go into a deadlock situation, usually we refer the matter to the Ministry of Manpower to conciliate. So I think the working principle is we try to resolve things at the lowest level. We try to have alternative dispute resolution. So the Ministry of Manpower conciliation is one process which we use whenever we meet issues where we can't resolve both employers and unions. However, in Singapore, we have a very unique structure. We have something called the Industrial Arbitration Court. Yeah, it's a creature of statute, and it's uniquely Singapore.
Okay. How does it work?
How does it work? It works because if at the Ministry of Manpower there's a deadlock and we can't really resolve anymore because they are merely conciliatory meetings. There's no force of law. There's no adjudication. What happens is that we have two choices. Firstly is to go on strike,
Okay.
and take industrial action, which is permissible if you follow certain process. So strike is allowed in Singapore. It's not illegal. It's allowed.
Okay.
Unless, but of course, certain procedures, especially if we are in essential services. However, in Singapore, uniquely, we have this industrial arbitration court. It's presided by a High Court judge. Yeah, I've appeared before in public hearings for more than 10 occasions. So we've been through it, and we have used that mechanism to resolve some of the disputes. And usually, when the industrial arbitration court is convened, it's presided by a High Court judge who, besides being a High Court judge, holds the appointment as the president of the Industrial Arbitration Court. You have an employer representative from SNEF, as well as an employee representative from NTUC on the panel. So it's sort of like a three-judge
But in
panel.
a way, you are forcing a conversation to take place, right?
And therefore, at the end of the day, the judge, in this case, the president of the IAC, will then adjudicate over the matter. We will represent the union will be represented. The employers will be represented as well, and then we will give our submissions, and then there will be a hearing. We make our case, we cross-examine witnesses, and at the end of the day, the judge will mete out his grounds of decision, and that will be
upheld.
Yes.
Okay, so in a way, you are forcing that negotiation to happen. Whereas when we see in other countries, like recently in Hollywood, when the writers went on strike, Hollywood pretty much shut down. Because if both sides don't want to talk to each other, then nothing can be resolved.
But the only interesting thing I realized as I was sharing about this IAC is that unlike you taking a matter to the High Court, this is almost free of charge.
Okay.
This service is a free of charge service. Of course, there are costs because I represent the workers, GG represent the employers, and there's cost time.
Okay.
But essentially, it's a mechanism where there are no exorbitant charges, and affected members can raise the matter through the union to. Or employers can, through the employer federation, raise this, and then we can adjudicate the matter at a very economical, accessible.
And I can see that making sense. You're forcing a conversation to happen. You're forcing everyone to the table to say, let's work it out, so that we don't end up having days of strikes and things like that, where everyone suffers.
Exactly. So in fact, most cases don't even go to the IAC
right.
because of the way in which we all value the very strong, harmonious industrial relations
and conciliation
that we have.
as well.
And the ability to always come to the table to talk.
Right.
So in most instances, you find that internal to the company, they would have a grievance handling process that will deal with the issue. If after having gone through the process, the workers still feel that maybe
still unhappy.
Issue, then actually they can go to TAFED and TADEM, right? Under the Ministry of Manpower.
Maybe give some advice. So for people listening in, perhaps both sides, companies who are saying, I may have to at some point let go of some people, how should I respond to this? And also from the employee's point of view, if I feel that I've been unfairly, let go of, how can both sides respond? So perhaps share with us just, if those listening in are in that situation.
Okay, so if you are individual worker that feel that your dismissal, in this case, whether it's a retrenchment or otherwise, has been dealt with unfairly. In general, as I mentioned, the first step within the company, there will be a grievance handling process, which if having gone through, the worker is not satisfied with the outcome, they can actually go to the Tripartite Alliance for Fair Employment Practices or the Tripartite Alliance for Dispute Management. Especially for dismissal, they go to TADEM, the dispute management, where this is meant under Ministry of Manpower. They will be able to advise the worker on whether there is a case. Because sometimes the individual may think that the dismissal has been done unfairly, but that it may not be true. It may not be so. So that's where the TADEM would be able to advise the individual accordingly. And if there is a case, TADEM will then seek information from the employers. And then the employers and the workers, if there's a case, would then go through TADEM for mediation. And hopefully the issue is resolved there. And of course, if it's not, then it could go to the IAC, as Patrick had mentioned earlier.
As for me, just a simple one-liner. Be part of the union, be a union member. Because if you are a union member, if you face any problems in the workplace, any problems, when workplace issues, do come to the union or to NTUC, and we'll walk the journey and advise you and support you in that process.
Okay, I love the way you say any problem so confidently. Well, my coffee machine not very good in my office.
Oh, you'd be surprised, Steven. we have actually had issues on the ground where the placement of water dispensers in the large workplace.
I guess so. Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. I confidently say that because I personally handled quite a few issues the past 2 decades, and it could be quite. You'd be surprised. Simple floor mat,
that's
simple.
True. It could make a big difference. One more thing, and also for the employers' side, maybe Guan, again, what employers who are in a situation where they are feeling they have to soon manage a situation of letting go of some people, advice?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, it's more important to be thinking more upstream. So I believe a lot of companies are starting to think about business transformation and the impact not just on the business but on their workers. And that's where they can come to SNEF. We will be able to provide advice. And not only that, actually, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of government grants that are available for companies to leverage on, and not all companies are familiar with all the grants that are available, and we can also, help you in terms of being able to use those grants to help with business transformation. And actually, it's quite important that companies also start thinking about how do you bring your workers along even as you are transforming your business. So today we have a guidebook we call the Structured Career Planning Guide. And the whole idea of Structured Career Planning Guide is to enable the company to put in place a process where they have continued conversations with the workers, especially the more senior workers, in terms of where do they see themselves in terms of the job role, the future job role within the company.
That's right.
What are the steps that can then be taken to help those individuals
Because sometimes after you transform the company, you still need people to do the job,
always
right?
Need people.
So how
you
do you
always need
keep
people,
the
right?
ones you've had
yeah,
before?
and the people that have
Okay,
been
but
with
don't
you.
tell us all,
Yes.
because I think this is one part where you say join SNEF.
Yes,
because
join
membership
SNEF.
has its
We will help
privileges,
you.
right?
Correct.
And NTUC too.
And NTUC too. Okay, so both sides of the coin, whether you're employer or employee, I think it's good to hear that there are options and resources available if you ever find yourself in a sticky situation. So on that note, I think we would just want to say thanks for coming in, sharing these thoughts. I mean, I've found some clarity because I have to admit, I'm not part of a union, but now I will consider thinking about it.
Thank you.
For those of you listening in, if you have any thoughts, any feedback on this as well, we do love to hear from you. Of course, we are on all the usual podcast options on Spotify, also on our website, and also now on YouTube. So if you're watching us on YouTube, a big thank you as well. And a big shout out to my podcast team, Tiffany Ang, Joanne Chan, Saya Win, and Crispina Robert. But otherwise, I'm Stephen Chia saying bye for now.